Anthony Darby, Peninsula Podcast. I'm here with Jake Van Wingerden.
Yep.
Nice. With SunMed Growers. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yep. Welcome.
You and I have known each other for a long time, and I spoke to you last week at the MDMDA meeting about how impressed I've been with what you've been able to accomplish over the last couple of years and really changing the position that SunMed has in Maryland's market. And the opportunity to come out here in this Dutch glass facility was something I didn't want to pass up, so thanks for having us today.
Glad you're here. So happy to have you.
I want to start, as we were talking about before, your family has been growing
Yep.
For a long time, right?
Yep.
And not just like farming, but involved in, this is the folks that make these glass
Yep.
houses have lineage to your family back here?
Sure. So my story is my grandfather on my father's side, his name is Art Van Wingerden. He moved here after World War II from Holland. And he brought with him experience and a work ethic in the controlled agricultural realm. And Holland is kind of like the epicenter of controlled environment for agriculture, bedding plants and ornamental type plants included and perennials. And so he when he moved here in the 40s, he set about starting businesses that grow petunias and marigolds and geraniums and for sale, to garden centers. And that he had 16 children, 12 boys, 4 girls, and my father was right in the middle there. And so he grew up, working in greenhouses. And then my grandfather, over the years, would start a business and then leave a son or two and then move to another state for new opportunity, and then those sons would stay and run that business. And the legacy of that is that my uncles and now a lot of my cousins, because the uncles are all getting older, operate and run some of the largest greenhouse production facilities in the United States. And I think that at last time I counted, it's like 26 million square foot of greenhouse was owned or operated by a relative of me, from that family tree. My story was I grew up working for, in my dad's bedding plant greenhouse. And when I say bedding plants, I'm talking, again, it's containerized geraniums and pansies and petunias and poinsettias, that you would buy at, Home Depot or Lowe's or Walmart. So my story was I grew up in north of Philly in a greenhouse. My dad had a facility there that I grew up working at every day after school and on weekends. And that's kind of where, my love of agriculture and growing things and, doing it at scale, where I learned what I did. And then when I was 18, he sold that business and moved the whole family out to Colorado. And I went with him and, as a young man, worked with him as he started a brand new greenhouse operation out there. And then when I was 26, after working with him for 8 years, I wanted to start my own facility. And so me and my wife and our 2 children at the time moved to Maryland. That was 2001. And we started my bedding plant greenhouse called Tidal Creek Growers. And that company has 10 years later, has 2 operating facilities, one down in Davidsonville, Maryland, and one here in Cecil County in Earlville, where we grow several, 8 or 9 million individual potted plants, petunias, marigolds, geraniums, and we sell it to local garden centers and Lowe's and Home Depot and Walmarts up and down the East Coast. It's not confined to Maryland. It's a regional business, and it's all wholesale. We don't sell to retail, right? So that's my growing background, and that's the world I live in, is in this high volume agricultural of potted plants, and it's very seasonal. Like springtime is petunias and marigolds, winter is poinsettias, and the fall is mums and pansies. So that's the world I've grown up in, I live in, my contacts are in, my family is in. And so back in 2015, when Maryland was the the medical cannabis industry was first, coming to light with the commission and the applications and all that, I had a brother, my younger brother Aaron, operates a facility very much like mine out in Colorado. And Colorado, is 5 years ahead of us.
Sure.
And so he had gotten into, he has his bedding plant range, and he partnered up with a group, and they started a cannabis range. So when I would go out to see him, I would go see his cannabis, range and his facility, and I would, hey, Maryland, this is coming from Maryland. I should look into this. And so he really helped guide me to, get educated, get contacts, get consultants, that kind of stuff. And so when the application hit, I was ready to, I had a team, of consultants and, people helping me to write this application. And I with those people and those consultants, I wrote my own application. We submitted it. And then when we heard there was 148 applications for growers, I was like, there's not a chance I'm going to win. I'm just a farmer from Cecil County. I have no political connections. I don't know what I'm doing with cannabis, because my application was very much of a, I come from a growing background. I know how to grow plants.
Right.
We can take this experience and translate it to this. But back in 2016, there was a lot of the beginnings of the MSOs, right? We're all starting to take hold, the Crescos and the Veranos and all these.
Of the world.
And, they were hot. They were very front and center, here in the political realm of, we want to do it here. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to beat those people out.
Right.
They have professional teams writing these applications. I just sat in my office for a month and wrote it myself.
Me too.
Yeah. So, and then when they came out with the rankings, there was a delay. I don't know if you remember that. It took 9 months, right?
I remember that?
Yeah.
Hello. I quit my job when my friends think I'm the coolest kid in the world because I'm submitting an application. And they're like, hey, how's the application going? I was like, well, they told me they were going to tell me by January 1st. It's February, March, April, May, June, July. I mean,
Took
you guys
forever.
found out when, July?
I think it was August.
August.
July or
We didn't
August.
find out till December.
That's right. It was a couple months later.
Yeah.
So I had actually, the property we're on right here, I had under contract. And it was under contract till March, because that's when they said it was going
Right.
to come out. And then there was a delay, so we had to extend the contract. I didn't want to lose this property because it was part of my application. This property, we had it pre-approved. We had natural gas. It was right down the road from where I live. It was perfect. So we had to extend a little bit more money, not too much, to keep it under contract. And then when we won, I was shocked. I mean, literally shocked. I didn't sleep for a week because I was so excited.
Yeah, I was the same way.
Yeah, and I got to do 50,000 things all at once, right? Because we were all under this 1 year deadline too, which was an impossible deadline.
Right.
So that was our story of how we got it. And, when we got that license, I worked my rear off for 3 years to pull this out, because we were different. SunMed was different. We were taking a piece of dirt, a field, an old farm, leveling it out and building something from scratch. And I think everyone else had existing
people use
facilities they
existing
retrofitted.
facilities, yeah.
Whether it was Forward Grow, they had an old greenhouse they were using, or Curio was, in a warehouse. And then that 1 year deadline was hanging over our head, and I had to move heaven and earth. And then, of course, all those lawsuits hit all at once, and that was a huge stress on everybody.
Everybody.
So yeah, that was.
So we wrote our application. We had 40 days to write it. You didn't have a lot of time.
Nope.
It was here's the deadline. It has to be in by November 13th or something like
Yep.
that. We sprinted, got it in, and then it's all right. At least my whole thought was, so I was in a full-time role. A VC company came in and fired 130 of us at one time, but they gave us a severance package. It was 6 weeks, and I was like, I'm never going to know if I don't try.
Yeah.
And for $5,000, which is all we spent to submit an application,
right.
I was like, I'm going to take a shot at it. And to your point, I knew that everyone else was spending lots of money with the right attorneys and the right consultants and the right political ties, and we didn't have a lot of that in our application. We had done a lot of research, though. I looked at states like Arizona was kind of our key benchmark state.
Arizona. That was where I went.
That was
to
the
as
most
well.
data that I
Yep.
could pull and seen the most realistic. Colorado, California, they were so much more mature.
Yep.
Some of the East Coast states, Massachusetts wasn't developed yet. Delaware was a cluster.
Yep.
So
That's funny. Arizona is the one I was using modeling, and
Yep.
and
and then we we were just waiting and waiting and waiting. And I remember they told me, I remember just breaking down in tears, being like, holy shit. And then like there's this, oh my God, I have this opportunity, and oh my gosh, look at the responsibility I'm about to undertake, right? Like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And it's, in some ways it feels like yesterday, and other days I know the maturation and like the maturity that I have in my head now versus when I first got that. And it's crazy how much I know about cannabis and business and like experiences I've had through this process. And we were, to your point, there's this 1 year deadline, right? So we sprint to get open and get our build out done, and we got approved in August of 2015. And I'm just sitting there with my thumbs because no one's got product.
Right.
And then I know that I'm talking
dispensaries are getting approved
I was
before us
talking to
growers were ready.
Grow, and I like talking to Gary, and I have this like handshake deal that like he promises me that because we're approved, he's going to give me the product. And then I find out it goes to Blair Wellness, right? I mean, we're talking old school lineage stuff here. And I was like, how could you possibly send good flour that my patient's going to get? He couldn't tell me it wasn't great flour, right? He couldn't tell me why it went to processing. He just had to baby face me.
Blair Wellness, the processor.
The processor.
Yeah, not the dispensary.
Not even dispensary. No,
that's right, because he had problems with his first crops.
Correct.
That's right. Yep.
And no one knew that, right? I just thought that this is a guy who's making my life harder, not really like being empathetic of this poor guy just had his whole first crop thrown to process.
Because all had powdery mildew or something, right?
And then good old December 5th, we opened our door. December 4th, we opened up with a curio delivery. Got it. Of flowers. We opened with 5 strains of flower, awakening tabs, synergy tabs, and maybe an elixir. Yeah. I mean, it was like bare bones, like nothing. And then Sure Natural, believe it or not, started coming through. They were one of the earlier ones to get approved, and then everyone started coming to. Yeah. Do you remember when you guys sent out your first harvest?
It was our first sale was actually to Drew when Drew used to work for AFS. And it was like February or something like that of I think 18. We have a picture, of him behind that first trim from us.
And then, like, what about the lab testing in 2018? Like, no one ever knew what heavy metals were testing. Everything was testing high for all these like crazy things. The labs weren't really sure what they were doing. And it was just so chaotic.
Well, we did a lot of work on that heavy metal stuff because one of the things they test for is chromium.
Yes.
And chromium is integral to the making of stainless steel. Like chromium is the metal that they add to steel, raw steel to make it stainless. So anything that's stainless steel has chromium built into it. But what we found is that brand new tabletops, scissors, trimmers, you name it, when it first comes to you, that dust from the manufacturing is embedded into it. And that chromium was getting picked up, that dust was hitting the buds, and then that's what was getting tested. So we found that the product that we had to buy was called Barkeeper's Friend.
I know that stuff.
And that's the stuff you keep your grill clean with. Yeah. That got all the chromium off, and then we stopped failing tests. Now it's just, hey, whenever you get anything brand new stainless, scrub it with Barkeeper's Friend. But yeah, I mean, finding out all those things, because who knew? Who would have known that? Like, it was crazy.
Were you familiar with these integrated pest management programs before you got it? So you're used to using. I mean, that was one of the big eye-opening things for me was no pesticides, and I walk in and I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but you see these little packets behind us that hang on the trees, and there's good bugs in there that come out and they eat the bad bugs and they go back in the bag. It's pretty amazing.
Well, and we always say the good bugs are the carnivores, the bad bugs are the herbivores. Right? That's the because in our world we don't want the herbivores to hurt the plant.
Right.
So and that
so
was a
so you guys are actually ganging up on the vegetarian plant, the vegetarian bugs, we want and getting them out of here. Yeah, you want the
and what we want is we want them to starve to death, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we don't want any bad bugs in here, but they come in. I mean, there's no you can't bugs get in. So you have to you can edit that out. That's the break bell. It's lunchtime.
That's awesome.
So anyway, but yeah, the bugs come. That's how they ship to us. I mean, integrated pest management. These good predator bugs. There's a whole industry that supplies not just cannabis. Yeah. It's fruit and vegetable and you name it.
It's really neat.
Yep.
So you had this experience.
Yep.
What was what were the top 3 things that were like, oh, this is a little more unique to cannabis than like growing the plants that you had the history of doing?
So to be honest with you, we went through an evolution here. It took us several years to get dialed in, and partly it was, I have my team that we first brought on was people who had experience growing cannabis in the past, right? Maybe not in this commercial setting, but definitely in a
setting.
In a setting. Good. Or from out of state where it
Yes.
was legal. That team, there's a saying, you don't know what you don't know, right? And I was very much of a, hey, I don't know what I don't know about this. I grow petunias that look pretty, right? I don't grow buds that people
are going to use and consume, right? It's way more like food
right.
than a nursery product.
Correct. So, yeah, because it's all about looks, right, and shelf life. Here it's about taste and potency. And so we relied on other knowledge. I had to build a team very, very quickly from scratch, right? And so I'm the only owner here. So we hired in talent from out of state and from in state, and we built a team. And for better or for worse, we had to learn a lot about how to grow this plant, and the way that you grow 5 or 10 or 20 plants in your basement is not how you grow 5 or 10,000 in a greenhouse at scale. And there is a lot of, we call it heritage knowledge around here, that kind of that old school cannabis grow knowledge that talks about how to feed it, how to prune it, how to take care of this plant, that does not hold up in a at scale horticultural, production facility.
I agree.
Yeah.
We find that that's probably
Yep.
one of the number one things that I hear from folks in their first and second year when they go out and found the quote unquote cannabis expert who could grow in a tent.
Yep.
They can grow in a room.
Yep.
They can't grow in a
can't grow at scale.
100,000 square foot facility. And that's where the plant scientists
Yep.
are really starting to show their value.
Right.
And we're really starting to see a much more of a value in food crop production history.
Yep.
And just general horticulture history than necessarily I grow the best flower in XYZ
Right.
and for 100
and
plants.
there's a saying, correlation does not equal causation, right? And so some of the heritage, things we heard, you laugh at it from a commercial production percentage, but there's people out there that advocate putting molasses on your plants, right, or kelp or whatever, and it'll make the buds taste better. Well, that's not how plant physiology works. And it's so the biggest thing we learned, it took us several years, is that our traditional plant growing knowledge that I have from a lifetime of being in the industry translates just fine here. So we had to make, and it was my call, we had to cut off the heritage growing style, go back to our basics of a balanced growing approach, and I'm talking balance from a feed standpoint, from a plant pruning, from just a way to think about how we produce. That balance has now brought steadiness to our grow.
That heritage style at
Yep.
scale becomes very reactive.
Very reactive. You
It's
can't do it that
we
way.
have to do this, or
Yep.
this is spiking. Let's balance it with this, and
Correct.
they know how to fix things when they go wrong.
That's sitting in water.
But that's not like the most ideal way of. And when you mentioned balance, you mentioned consistency. When you have hundreds of thousands of square feet of canopy space,
Right.
That's the goal, right?
Correct.
And
this plant, it's the most aggressive plant I've ever grown in my life. And I've grown millions of plants and thousands of varieties. It is the most aggressive. And so because it's aggressive, it wants more of everything. It wants more light, more CO2, more fertilizer, more water, more everything than any other plant I've ever grown. And you have to find that right balance. And once you find the balance, the plant does its thing. Like the genetics of the plant is much more important. And if you can give it a balanced fertilizer approach that everybody knows in horticulture, it's nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, like those are NPK. Like that, you start there with balance, and then there is some minors that they want a little more phosphorus, a little more iron, a little less zinc, whatever the balance is. But once you find that little bit of balance, you're good. You don't need all these swings and ups and downs that make it not feasible to grow it at scale.
Do you treat all the plants the same?
Everything's treated the same.
Not this is a sativa, it's tall and long and it's lanky, or this is like short and bushy. It's
No,
just
we've found the balance, and it took us years to dial in that balance. And then what we've also found too is, certain strains and phenotypes work better with our system than others. So the ones that don't work with our system get flushed out in our selection process.
So we've talked a lot, and you've been self-admitting that it took you several years to get dialed in.
Yep.
And I've seen SunMed go from the largest producer to the processors
Yep.
in the state, and maybe someone that would give you a $40 eighth or a cheaper place
Yep.
in the marketplace.
SunMeds, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we were. We know it.
And it's not easy.
No.
When people have this image of you that you are not premium product, that
Nope.
you are, just an average brand. So many folks try to get a cool logo, or they really try to focus on the aesthetics of it to polish it up. And we didn't really see that from you guys.
Yep.
It was a very organic, hey, this strain from SunMed's actually fire. Hey,
Yep.
this strain from SunMed's even better. Hey, now there's 5 good SunMed strains. Now there's 10. Now, hey, you know what? We've actually noticed that for the last 12 months, everything from SunMed has been really on point.
Yep.
And then last September-ish, all of a sudden the concentrates start coming.
Yep.
And that was just, you mentioned that, you're not a consumer. I am a heavy consumer and a busy guy and don't have a lot of time to consume cannabis anymore.
Yeah.
So I typically use concentrate, so I'm consuming cannabis 1 to 3 times a day, and that's
Right.
it. So because of that, I'm constantly looking for a really good terpene profile that's going to help me, medicate in the morning and roll through the day. And I've just been really impressed with the concentrates that Max has been putting out and your team at SunMed Labs. It really has turned the concentrate market in Maryland upside down on its head. They were
Yeah, it's
doing a good
awesome.
job at
Thank you.
MPX, right?
Yeah.
Like they established themselves at MPX and said, hey, these guys that were at AFS, if you give them some decent
Yeah.
stuff, they'll do better than they were. But they had their challenges there. And I've known
they
Drew.
had big challenges there.
Yeah.
I mean, we brought them here, and I've known Drew and Max since the
You
AFS
told me,
days.
no
Then they
question.
went to MPX. They were one of our biggest purchasers of our trim, and we had a great relationship and partnership with them. And then we had an opportunity to buy a processing license. We bought the old the Curaleaf license that was out in Cumberland. And then, before I made the deal, I called up Drew and said, hey, you're going to come work for me, right? And he's like, he tells the story, hey, when the Yankees call, you answer.
Yeah, right?
And so, we were able to get Drew and Max and Steve, and my job as the owner here at SunMed is to equip my team with the best tools and processes so they can do their best job, right? And that will make us successful. So my approach is buy the best, give them what they need, every tool under the sun, they have as much biomass as they can handle, and basically turn them loose and go make your best product. Don't cut any corners. Whatever machine or tool or process you want to buy, I say yes to, obviously, within reason.
Right.
I'm not going to buy a Lamborghini, right?
But they
every
have the
time.
Lamborghini at processing
They
equipment.
do.
I know
mean,
they do. I know that they're well
we go
tooled.
through a process of looking at each piece of equipment, make good decisions. I ask very critical questions, but at the end of the day, I trust those 3 men to bring me the right things, and they execute it. And they're doing a phenomenal job. I mean, it's a great partnership between those 3 guys and us here at SunMed. Because at the end of the day, me and my team are plant growers, right? We're not processors.
Right.
But those 3 guys have just plugged right in here, and it's great. So
You can tell there's a good team culture here. I know that Drew feels very valued here. I can tell when I talk to you that.
Yeah.
I know that Drew values you very much. And I feel myself the same way. I mean, when you look at the team that I put together, my goal is just to try to put them in the best positions to win. I hate micromanaging. I can't stand managing people. I like to lead, like be a leader, like to say this is where we're going to go, who's coming with me, and what do we need to do to get there. And you've kind of have really advanced this place. And I was here about 2.5 years ago. I could have swore that I came right after phase 1 was complete. And You were
Okay.
talking about phase 2. Like,
Yep.
literally, you were like, I want to show you phase 1, but I've already submitted plans for phase 2. And I
that's
was like,
right.
this guy's like moving and shaking.
Well, it takes 2 years to build these things. Like there's like from the time you make a decision to the time you're putting out product is 2 years. It's a tremendously long process. Raising the capital, doing the design, getting the permits, through all the various agencies, and then the actual construction, and then it's 6 months from the time you plant a plant till the time it's in the patient's hands. So then those 2 years they creep up on you. So I have to read a crystal ball. 2 years out, what's the
2
marketplace
years in the
going to
cannabis
want?
space for everyone that's in business. They go, well, I forecast 2 years.
Yeah.
Not in the cannabis space.
Right.
Not when you're still fairly illegal.
Right.
Not when you don't know what your tax code's going to be. Not
That's
when
right.
you don't know all the unknowns. You're in a crystal ball. You're better off tell me what the temperature is going to be in 3 weeks on a Friday.
I know, and especially with Annapolis and the various political arguments that happen down there, and
Cannabis
who knows?
crosses. It's a medicine. It's a social equity issue. It's an access
Yep.
issue. It's a libertarian issue. I mean,
Yep.
how much you regulate, how much you don't regulate it, whether adults can use it openly, whether they need a card for it. There's a lot that's still being ironed out about
Right.
how we treat this plant.
And it's
it
also
does make it challenging for us.
access and affordability. I mean, we sell to people who they don't want to pay that much, right? They want to have affordable medicine. They want to have a product that they can afford to consume. And I take that very seriously. And so we at SunMed want to be the volume producer, in Maryland. And, we definitely have worked on that very heavily to be that volume producer that's consistent. And then over the last year and a half, we've also put right at the top was getting better quality, and that started with a whole genetic reset, and it also was a huge deal for us to get into the tissue culture world.
Can you talk about what a challenge finding solid genetics was when you first opened?
awful.
And even
It's awful.
So I assume that not only did you have all these facility issues that you were figuring out how to get the
Yep.
lighting right, how to get the HVAC
Yep.
consistent, humidity levels, but then you're also using unstable genetics,
Correct.
which even if you had this facility now and put those bad genetics in here, you still have a lot of challenges, right?
Yeah, getting genetics is something we don't talk about openly, but at the end of the day, most genetics, they start from a seed form, and we have to take those seeds, grow them out, right? It takes 6 months to get them to the finish line, and then harvest it, test it, get feedback on it, right? And that process, when we plant seeds, you plant 50 or 100 of the same, right? You go through a phenotype hunting.
Who's going to be the mom, right?
Yeah, of who's the best of those seeds, right? Because obviously the cannabis plant, for someone who doesn't, know it, is a male and a female variant, right? The male produces pollen, the female produces the bud. For medical cannabis, we want unfertilized females. So, because if you fertilize it, then you create more seeds, right? We want unfertilized buds with no seeds. So then but we have to buy in the seeds from a breeder, usually on the West Coast somewhere. Those seeds come in, and those seeds are a combination of a male plant and a female plant, and so we have to plant those seeds. And so typically, what we would do is we would get 50 or 100 seeds of a strain, and then we would have to call out all the males from the females. The males come out, the females come.
You're literally walking through,
Yeah.
and as soon as you see that little pollen or nut sack for the,
Then you gotta pull it.
You got to pull it.
But the ones you keep, now you run in a small production, right? And you make a gut check originally on, is this a decent strain from a standpoint of a bud structure, leaf to bud ratio, and is it going to taste and smell good? And then the potency comes last. That initial selection that I just talked about takes you 9 months, right? Now you have
Per strain.
So now I have 3 or 4 finalists out of those 50 seeds. So now we take those 3 or 4 finalists, we run them again against each other. So we would have cheesecake is one we had. Cheesequake, I think, is an early one we had. And we had cheesecake number 1, 7, and 14. Those were and it took us 9 months to a year to finalize it. And then we run those again against each other. And then we're comparing those 3 finalists against each other. And which strain is higher THC, terpenes, yield, all that kind of stuff. That takes another 9 months. So now we're a year and a half in, and hopefully I have a finalist. And then that finalist becomes our production strain. And then what we ran into is we then would pick a strain, looks great, we'd run it for 6 months or a year, and all of a sudden it would go downhill. And we wouldn't get the THC we wanted. We weren't getting the yields we wanted. It would not taste good. People were complaining about it. So what's going on? And then we found out that it's hop latent viroid, which is a viroid that's very prevalent. A lot of people out west have experienced this viroid, and it's actually like a blood disease of the plant. It gets into the veins of the plant, and it can be transferred mechanically, like through your scissors, or it can actually come on in the seed.
Genetically.
And it's in the genetics that we had received. But it takes 3 or 4 generations to show itself. And what it's showing itself in reduced vigor, reduced THC, reduced terpenes, reduced everything. So, all right, well, how do you treat it? And how you treat it is called meristem tissue culture, where they actually go in, they take cells from the plant and they put it in a petri dish and they grow out a new plant from those cells. And, in that process, and it takes 6 to 9 months or even a year.
Nothing's fast.
It cleans it up. So once it cleans it up, now you get back that original vigor that you were anticipating. So this is about 2 years ago, we recognized we had a problem here. And so we ended up, going down this tissue culture path. And what you're seeing in the marketplace is that the decisions we made 18 months ago to go down this path, and now our entire greenhouse is full of clean, tissue cultured, mothered products that are free of this viroid. And this is a common problem for almost all cannabis cultivations throughout the world. It's a viroid that's just in the last 3-4 years have been recently identified and now getting worked on. And we of course trade notes with people that are in this world as well, and this is what you have to do, but it takes a long time to get clean.
These plants look so much different than the plants that I saw before.
And we had, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, we had side by side of clean and unclean, as the transition happened, and it is night and day. Night and day difference.
Well, I could talk to you for hours and hours,
Yeah.
but I appreciate you grabbing some time with us. I can't thank you enough. For patients in Maryland are thrilled for giving affordable, really high quality medicine.
Yep. There's more coming.
I'm really looking forward to see what the next. I know that you guys are, as we talked earlier. It takes 2 years to plan these things out. So I know that you're already working on some new advancements for the processing guys. Continued, you're going to have a cookies partnership coming to. You're working
a couple
on
partnerships that we will announce very shortly is cookies. We're going to be an authorized grower for them. And then we also have a partnership that's going to be in the marketplace very soon with AeroPro, the vape pen company. So that'll be very shortly.
Yeah, Steve. We just got some new wall signage from Steve for AeroPro.
So we're excited about that one. That's a real high quality brand. And then another thing we're working on right now is edibles. So this time next year, we should have a full line of gummy bears, chocolates, and baked goods that we're going to bring to market.
That's awesome.
So,
Well, we're looking forward to it. Thank you so much for taking some time with me today.
Of course.
I appreciate it.